I'm here with Kylie White, who is a present dietitian. So, we're talking about iron today. Kylie, could you please tell us what iron is?
That's a great question, Nicole. So iron is a nutrient found in our foods that helps keep our bodies really healthy, and it's a nutrient that we need to live. Iron is what we call a micronutrient, and it's actually a mineral, and it's found in many different types of foods.
What foods do we find iron in, Kylie?
That's another really good question, Nicole. So there's actually two different types of iron. One is the type of iron that we find in animal sources of foods, so things like our meats and our shellfish, and that type of iron is called heme iron. And that type of iron is very absorbable for our bodies. So really great sources of iron in our animal foods are organ meats like liver, as well as red meats like our beefs and our porks.
And ducks.
And ducks. You also find iron in duck, yes, that's correct. And also in our shellfish, so our oysters and our mollusks and our mussels. Those are all great sources of heme iron. Our second type of iron is found in our plant foods, and that's called non-heme iron. And that's a little bit less absorbable by our bodies than our heme iron. Some really great sources of non-heme iron are beans, as well as legumes, whole grains, and cereals. Those are fortified with iron, as well as leafy green foods like spinach. Now we can do something to make that iron more absorbable for us, and that's by including foods with vitamin C in our diets, as well as eating the non-heme sources of iron. So for example, spinach is a great leafy green vegetable with lots of non-heme iron, and to make our bodies absorb the iron in that spinach more, we can have vitamin C, like tomatoes, which are great sources of vitamin C, or oranges, which are great sources of vitamin C, with our spinach.
So, what does iron do in our bodies?
Well, iron is a part of our red blood cells, Nicole. And our red blood cells carry different nutrients and important things throughout our body to all of our different organs and tissues. What iron does on the red blood cells is it helps the oxygen that we breathe in stick to our red blood cells so that our oxygen can be carried all throughout our bodies. And oxygen is what helps make all of our organs and tissues function. So that's what iron does for us.
Wow! So, what are the dangers of having too much or too little iron?
Great question, Nicole. So too little iron is something that we commonly see in Canada, and that's something that we call iron deficiency anemia. And what that means is we don't have enough iron on our red blood cells to carry the oxygen around our bodies. So that can cause things like weakness. If a person doesn't have enough iron, they also may appear very pale because the iron sticking to our blood cells is what makes them that bright red color. And also, people can have a hard time staying warm, so they may find they get really cold very easily and they're not able to warm up very quickly. Can also cause a little bit of confusion because iron's important for carrying oxygen to our brains, and if our brains don't have enough oxygen, it may be a little bit harder for us to think. When we have too much iron, we can also see some negative things happening. So too much iron can make you feel really sick, so it can hurt your stomach, make you nauseous, it may even make you throw up. The other thing that can happen with too much iron is if it continues to build up in our bodies, it can damage some of our organs, like our brains and our livers, which in the long run can even cause very serious sicknesses and maybe even death. Don't worry though, because it's pretty hard to get too much iron from eating your foods. We only really get too much iron if we take too many supplements that have iron in it. So if we see a bottle of iron supplements out, we should know we shouldn't be taking those unless our doctors told us to take them.
Well, that about wraps it up, people. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Nicole.
We'll see you later. Is it safe to eat a metal bar?
Probably not, Ryan. You would probably die.